The rain hammered against the glass windows of Morgan and Associates as Claire Peterson sat in the waiting room, her hands trembling around a lukewarm cup of coffee. She had rehearsed what she would say 1,000 times, but now that she was here, the words felt stuck somewhere between her heart and her throat. "Ms. Peterson?" A warm voice called from the doorway. Claire looked up and felt her breath catch. The woman standing before her was nothing like she'd imagined a divorce lawyer would be. Attorney Rachel Morgan stood with quiet confidence, her dark hair pulled back in a professional bun, her gray suit perfectly tailored. But it was her eyes that stopped Claire cold, deep brown, intelligent, and somehow kind despite the sharp edge of experience that lingered there. "Please call me Claire," she managed, standing on unsteady legs. Rachel's office was all clean lines and mahogany furniture, diplomas lining one wall, family photos conspicuously absent. She gestured to a leather chair across from her desk. "Tell me what brought you here today, Claire." And so Claire began. She talked about Sarah, her wife of 7 years. About how the woman she'd married had slowly transformed into a stranger. About the late nights, the suspicious phone calls, the perfume that wasn't Claire's favorite scent clinging to Sarah's clothes. About finally hiring a private investigator and receiving photos that shattered whatever remained of her illusions. "The worst part," Claire said, her voice breaking, "is that I still remember when she used to look at me like I was her whole world. When did I stop being enough?" Rachel passed her a box of tissues, and Claire noticed the lawyer's hand lingered for just a moment, a gesture of comfort that felt genuine, not practiced. "You didn't stop being enough," Rachel said firmly. "Her choices aren't a reflection of your worth. They never were." Something in those words, in the conviction behind them, made Claire believe it might actually be true. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Sarah fought Claire on everything: the house, the cars, even their rescue dog, Murphy. Through it all, Rachel was a fortress. She anticipated every move Sarah's attorney made, countered every unreasonable demand, and somehow managed to keep Claire grounded when panic threatened to pull her under. Their meetings became the bright spots in Claire's darkest weeks. Rachel never rushed her, never made her feel foolish for crying over memories she should have been eager to forget. They talked about more than just legal strategy, about life, about rebuilding, about the terrifying freedom that comes with starting over. "You know what I miss most?" Claire said one evening, after a particularly exhausting mediation session. They were alone in Rachel's office, the building empty around them. "Having someone who actually listens." Sarah stopped listening years ago. "I just didn't realize it until it was too late." Rachel looked up from her notes, and their eyes met. "I'm listening, Claire. I always am." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither dared name. 4 months into the divorce proceedings, Claire's world tilted on a different axis entirely. She was driving home from a client meeting when the truck ran the red light. She didn't even have time to scream before the impact sent her sedan spinning. Glass shattered. Metal shrieked. And then, nothing but the haunting silence that follows disaster. She woke up in the hospital 3 days later, her body a map of bruises and breaks. Her sister Emma was there, red-eyed and exhausted. "You're going to be okay," Emma whispered. "You're going to be okay." But Claire didn't feel okay. Her right leg was shattered, her ribs cracked, her wrist fractured. The doctors said she'd need months of physical therapy. Her graphic design business would have to be put on hold. She couldn't even manage the stairs to her apartment. The truly crushing blow came when Sarah's attorney filed an emergency motion to postpone the divorce proceedings indefinitely, citing Claire's incapacitation and suggesting she was no longer mentally competent to make decisions. It was a transparent attempt to drag things out, to wear Claire down until she'd accept whatever scraps Sarah was willing to throw her way. Emma showed Claire the motion on her phone, and Claire felt something break inside her that had nothing to do with her injuries. "I'm calling Rachel," Emma said, already reaching for her phone. Rachel arrived at the hospital within an hour, still in her courtroom attire, her briefcase clutched in one hand and a bouquet of sunflowers in the other. "These are for fighting back," she said, setting them on Claire's bedside table. "Because that's exactly what we're going to do." She pulled a chair close to Claire's bed, and they strategized. Rachel would file a response demonstrating that Claire was fully competent, that the accident had affected her body, but not her mind. She'd request an expedited hearing. She'd fight this with everything she had. "You don't have to do all this," Claire said quietly. "I know you have other clients." Rachel's expression softened. "You're not just another client, Claire. You haven't been for a while now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. The weeks that followed, living with Rachel was like discovering a secret world. The lawyer who was so formidable in court was surprisingly domestic at home. She cooked elaborate breakfasts on weekends, sang off-key to 80s pop songs while doing dishes, and had an entire closet dedicated to rescue animals she fostered, currently housing a three-legged cat named Justice and a nervous chihuahua called Precedent. "You name your foster pets after legal terms?" Claire asked, laughing as Precedent curled up in her lap. "Sets a good example," Rachel said, deadpan. "Teaches them about the importance of following established guidelines." They fell into a rhythm. Rachel helped Claire with physical therapy exercises in the mornings before work. Claire, still unable to return to her design business, started helping Rachel with her case files, organizing documents, creating visual presentations for court. They cooked dinner together, or rather, Claire chopped vegetables from her wheelchair while Rachel handled the stove. They watched movies late into the night, Claire's head gradually finding its way to Rachel's shoulder. Neither of them acknowledged what was happening between them. It felt too fragile, too precious to name. The day of the competency hearing arrived like a storm. Sarah's attorney was aggressive, insinuating that Claire's judgment was impaired, that she needed psychiatric evaluation, that the accident had left her vulnerable and easily influenced. Rachel dismantled every argument with surgical precision. She called Claire's doctors, who testified that her cognitive function was unaffected. She presented evidence of Claire's continued professional work, the client emails and designs she'd been managing from home. She even called Emma, who spoke about her sister's strength and clarity of mind. When it was Claire's turn to testify, she rolled her wheelchair to the witness stand with her head held high. She answered every question clearly, confidently, never wavering. She looked Sarah directly in the eye and spoke her truth, that she knew exactly what she wanted, and it was to be free of a marriage that had died years before the accident ever happened. The judge ruled in Claire's favor in less than 10 minutes. The divorce would proceed as scheduled. In the courthouse hallway, Rachel pulled Claire into a hug that lasted just a moment too long for it to be merely professional. "You are incredible," Rachel whispered against her hair. "I had a good lawyer," Claire whispered back. The final divorce hearing was anticlimactic compared to the drama that had preceded it. Sarah, perhaps sensing that her tactics had backfired, agreed to a reasonable settlement. Claire got the house, which she promptly put up for sale. Sarah got most of the savings. They split everything else down the middle, including custody of Murphy, though the dog made it clear he preferred Claire's company. When the judge signed the final decree, Claire felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for longer than she realized. She was free. Truly, finally free. Rachel walked her out of the courthouse, their arms brushing with each step. "So," Rachel said carefully, "I suppose this concludes our attorney-client relationship." Claire stopped walking. They were standing under a maple tree, autumn leaves drifting down around them like confetti. "I suppose it does. Which means," Rachel continued, her voice steady despite the nervousness in her eyes, "that I'm no longer ethically prohibited from asking you to dinner. A real dinner. Not a case review with takeout." Claire's heart hammered against her ribs. "Are you asking me on a date, counselor?" "I am." Rachel's smile was tentative, hopeful. "I know the timing might seem strange. I know you've just been through hell. But Claire, these months with you have been... God, I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. Maybe ever. And I need you to know that my feelings for you had nothing to do with how I handled your case. I would have fought just as hard for you regardless because it was the right thing to do. But now that I can finally tell you how I feel..." Claire kissed her. It wasn't graceful. She was still in the wheelchair, and Rachel had to bend down awkwardly, and they bumped noses first. But it was perfect. Rachel's lips were soft, her hands gentle as they cupped Claire's face, And everything else, the courthouse, the divorce, the pain of the past year, faded into background noise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Rachel was grinning. "I'll take that as a yes?" "That's a yes," Claire confirmed. "Though I should warn you, I'm a terrible dinner date. I still can't really walk. I'm living in your guest room, and I cry." 6 months later, Claire actually stood, on her own two legs, in the kitchen of her new apartment. It was smaller than the house she'd shared with Sarah, but it was hers alone, filled with light and plants and furniture she'd chosen herself. Murphy dozed in a patch of sunlight, his tail thumping contentedly against the floor. Rachel came up behind her, wrapping her arms around Claire's waist and resting her chin on her shoulder. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking," Claire said, leaning back into her embrace, "about how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. If Sarah hadn't cheated, if I hadn't gotten divorced, if I hadn't had the accident, you wouldn't be here," Rachel finished. "With me." "With you," Claire agreed, turning in her arms. "You know what the crazy thing is? When I first walked into your office, I was so broken. I thought I'd never trust anyone again. I thought love was just another word for eventual disappointment. And now?" Rachel asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. "Now I know that the right person doesn't break you down. They help you build yourself back up, stronger than before." Claire kissed her softly. "You saved my life, Rachel. Not just legally, but in every way that matters." "You saved mine too," Rachel whispered. "I was so closed off before you. I'd convinced myself that my career was enough, that I didn't need anything else. But you showed me that I could have both, that opening my heart didn't mean losing myself. It meant finding the missing piece I didn't even know I was looking for." They stood there in the sunlight, Murphy snoring softly nearby, two women who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate disasters and built something beautiful from the ruins. Life, Claire reflected, had a strange sense of humor. She'd hired Rachel to help her end a marriage. Instead, Rachel had helped her begin a life. And this time, she knew with absolute certainty it was a life worth fighting for. Claire's journey from heartbreak to hope, from her divorce lawyer to the love of her life. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Have you ever found love in an unexpected place? If you were in Claire's position, would you have taken the chance on falling for your divorce lawyer, knowing how complicated it could become? And what about Rachel? Was it right for her to wait until after the case was over to reveal her feelings, or should she have been honest sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives on these complicated situations. Would you have done anything differently if you were in their shoes? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about love, second chances, and finding yourself when everything falls apart. See you in the next one.